located in the south of the besieged Gaza Strip. No casualties have been reported so far, but the airstrikes, which were allegedly a response to rockets launched from the Strip, have disrupted the supply of basic services such as water and electricity. And those are the headlines at this hour. For these and more stories, go to our website at telesurenglish.net. Thank you for watching.
How are you? Welcome to the critical move of Telesur. What are we going to be talking about? Today we're going to be talking about the war in Syria, that there's still a lot to go through. The scenario of tension is now concentrated in the part that is a border with Turkey. Why is there the belligerency in this area? What is the current role of these countries? How do the organizations, the international organizations, see all of this? What are they doing for it? Let's analyze this. Let's begin. Let's listen some of the pronouncements and about the solutions that may appear. This liberation does not mean the end of the war, nor the end of the terrorism. It just is a prelude of the victory that we will have sooner or later. We will not put our arms down. We're just going to prepare for the upcoming wars. Regardless of all of the things that we hear from Turkey, we have to still work for the liberation of Turkey. The administration of Kurds, semi-autonomous, is going to create tribunals. We say that we should create tribunals that are of many countries, because this is an international crisis. We have analyzed it with many countries, most of whom have answered to these questions. But as you know, the answer is going to have, it's a long process, and there are always many conflicts. There has been some dialogues. For the 5th of March, Putin has not answered. There have been neutralized some of the people from Al-Assad. And Idlib is one of the major problems. 12 tanks have been destroyed. Nobody ever said in the context that there would not be counterattacks. Should they act as the way they are now? I'm sure that it wasn't a surprise, because everybody understands it and sees it clearly. The terrorists have attacked our countries, the position of the Syrian country, where there have been observation. Let's see the map of this Syrian country. The north of Syria, the focus of all of the tensions with Turkey. The Republic of Syria is a sovereign country that is part of Asia. It has the limits with the Mediterranean, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, and the Sea of Galilee. There is the zone is, you see that some areas, it is now epicenter of political problems. And then because this is where the Syrian Kurdistan is located, with this objective, Ankara has launched the peace peace mantle that has only created more tension in the area. The important oil reserves is 30% of the Syrian reserve. This is a great a lot. The Kurdish and the Syrian have under their control some districts. And we are going to websites. Let's see what Telesur says. On February 22nd, it says the president of Turkey announces a summit about the situation in Turkey. Mr. Erdogan has announced that he will hold a summit about the situation in Syria with the participation of Germany, France, and Russia. And the topic will be this region of Idlib after the last group of terrorists of the Arab country and the national army has begun an offensive to liberate these places that are occupied. We will meet on March 5th and we will talk about these topics as part of the offensive of the Syrian Arab. Two Turkish military men were dead. On its behalf, Turkey counterattacked the Damascus army, with which they neutralized 50 army men and some equipment. A high official of Russia spoke with Russia about the stabilization of the situation in the no tension zone. The parts examined everything that has to do with stabilization of the situation in Idlib. This was said by the statement of the Minister of Defense of Russia. Hispan TV also speaks about this information. This is just of February 23rd, and it was called, the headline was called, Russia is bombarding several places in Idlib. According to the opposer, the Russian airplanes have bombarded several places of control of Turkey in Al-Mastumah. This is located 6 kilometers to the south of Idlib, the capital of the province that has the same name. There has been no victims. However, it has caused many losses in the army of Turkey. According to local resources, the extremist groups used to use these observation places as places to launch an offensive. This attack was produced days after the Turkish government had sent some missiles that was overflying the region. The Russian was able to escape from the Turkish missiles. Now they say that London has also have a great operation against the areas that are controlled by the terrorists in the south place of Idlib. And all of the areas that are there, Turkey supports the terrorist or so-called terrorist in Idlib, has pressed for the Arab Syrian army to detain their work. But however, this has not been possible. What they really want is to rescue the extremist groups from this part. Just Russia as well as Syria have said that the operation in Idlib, the last place where the extremists live. So this the agreement of Sochi in 2018 was subscribed to lower the tension. However, Bashar al-Assad has constantly denounced the attacks of of Syria on their country. Let's take advantage of suggestion that you read and analyze an article that is published by Sputnik, written by Dennis Luciano. The title is "Decisive Moment," and it says, "Is Syria in the brink of outlashing a war?" Just when the things began to look better, the governation of Idlib just became once again in a scenario of bloody wars. This time, the escalation came with the involvement of Turkey. The offensive of Syria has been an answer to the reiteration and all of the constant attacks on their human rights. So Damascus would never tolerate the attacks directed against its citizens. So to the question, will there be a new action against the Turkish? And to this question, he says, Turkey suspended any patrol on this area. So, in other words, it's possible, or the possible not peace of these parts can have bad consequences on the rest of the world. It's possible that Turkey may launch a new military operation in the zone. Additionally, it doesn't seem that Ankara doesn't want to trouble its good relationships with Moscow. Another question. What's happening in Idlib? The answer is the confrontations in Idlib will never finish. The life in this zone for the past years has been very hard. However, through the political situation, we have been able to start with the leaders during September of 2018, and this has been able to alleviate tensions. Regardless of all of the efforts, Idlib has not become a demilitarized zone in all of the sense of the word. At the same time, we have to understand nobody is thinking of establishing the control of Idlib because Russia respects the agreements. For now, the objective is to leave the most number of objectives to keep them out of the way of the enemy fire. Hisham Wanous, our correspondent from Damascus, has also given us a report about this. Hello, colleagues. During the last months, the armed forces of Libya have intensified their attacks against the positions in the northwestern policies of Norepo. This action, although it goes against the terrorist, the zone in Idlib and Haleb, they think that this might be a war that puts at risk her security and demands the immediate capture. And what they agreed was to create in Idlib was a place that was going to be legal to just be born free and be free. However, with the passing of time, these opposing groups did not only fortify their position in this conflict, but they also carried out attacks on the Syrian and Russian forces. Other terrorist groups took advantage of this instability, and therefore the Syrian army has reiterated their actions of anti-terrorism, where they fight against a great number And this is part of the associated group of and the so-called the Turkish party, as well as the party that is called the Muslim Brotherhood and other armed. The first and the second division of the Palestinian of the Turkish campaigns, the elite group of Syria, among others, and there are also terrorists, 5 or 6 that are active in Idlib, and the majority of whom are from European countries. Ankara has said some days ago an ultimatum. And this will go even worse if before the end of February no decisions are made yet. For this they will send 80 tanks, hundreds of shielded cars, and everything to obligate them to go back in the line. And this was done like the stipulation of the Sochi agreement. The tension has increased. And up until now, the confrontations continue, although sporadical, but they're always there. And these are 43 observation points. This also increased the possibility that there might be a confrontation between Ankara and Moscow. It's very possible that other organisms can see themselves involved. Above all, because Turkey is part of the OPEC, and they could and they might offer them everything. On the other hand, Russia, apart from the Russian-Syrian army, could also have the support of China. With this in mind, the world would be on the brink of a third world war. Meanwhile, by continuing with the President Bashar al-Assad, there's a species of peace that they cannot attain because Syria will not agree on signing a peace if all of the pieces are not exhibited here. Let's go back to studios in Caracas. This was very necessary, a bit extensive, but it was very necessary. And it gives us precisely
it was like, okay, the truth is, I'm attracted to other men. I said, okay, just keep it, don't talk to anyone else because you know what this means.
Premiere Saturday, only on Telesur.
Let's reiterate 2018. There was an agreement to demilitarize Idlib. For some months afterwards, these tensions have increased. Let's go over what has happened up until now. In September 2018, the presidents Vladimir Putin and Erdogan signed the Sochi agreement that was described in the city. This pact spoke of delimitation of 3 kilometers between the Syrian and the Arab nation. According to the agreement, Russia was not going to let the Syrian Arab government was not going to allow any attack, and likewise Syria. However, in October 2019, the President Erdogan began a military operation against the Syrian. And these are allies of international organizations. As a consequence, the opposing groups not only strengthened their position in the zone, but also, contrary to the Sochi agreement, there were attacks on the Syrian and Russian forces. Other groups that are terrorists also launched indiscriminated attacks against the demilitarized zone. Meanwhile, the Syrian army advances with their anti-terrorism attacks. The most recent operations have constituted a very strong blow on Turkey and their strategy in the zone. Damascus has said that the Turkish intervention is illegal and an attack on their sovereignty. The government of Bashar al-Assad say that all of the attacks will continue until Idlib is recovered. Experts affirm that all of the fronts just cross in Moscow. That's a very necessary mediator in this problem. The beginning of the hostilities of the Turkish troops do not go forward with a solution. Kremlin understand that the violations on behalf of Ankara are a point of no return. Idlib is still a strategic place for both sides. It's in this province where 2011 protests turned into an armed conflict that spread throughout the country. Let's begin with our first part of the analysis. We have from Argentina, Jorge Creime. He's an expert of international affairs. He's director of pulsodeLosPueblos.com, and from Chile, we have another specialist of the Middle East. We greet you both. Let's begin with Jorge. Jorge, who is the main responsible that everything that was written in Sochi is not being carried out in the northeast of Syria? Hello, Ray. Hello, Nicolás, and everybody from Telesur. Well, this situation just shows that there is a lack of previsibility in the international policy of Recep Erdogan. I think that who is violating the Sochi agreements and favoring the actions of the terrorist groups that come from Al-Qaeda in Libya, that is precisely the Turkish government, because he is putting in doubt these agreements. So, I think that attitude and asking the United States to provide them Patriot missiles to counteract the Turkish attack that has the support of the Russian militia. This constitutes a very serious situation. And now those groups that come from the ex-Al-Qaeda have been have been financed and controlled by the United States, because of which now the government should see what is better. And they cannot be nice to the people in Idlib. So now the situation is becoming very serious. It's threatening the international peace in this part of the world that is so volatile. Nicola, let's go to the dialogue with you. You have already mentioned that there is an actor who is not on ground, but is. This is United States. What do you think? Well, Ray, thank you very much for greeting us. Greetings from Chile. Well, the topic is that this is a very complex situation, and there are many parties, and the main one, the party that begins all this, is the U.S. with Israel. Turkey is a different element that does not fit within the U.S. interests. And on the other hand are the Kurds, that unfortunately have played very poorly, and they have not been able to move strategically. There are many places of the Kurdish left wing have allied with the United States with lots of innocence, because they know the United States will probably use them to create a Kurdish state. But once it's created, they will just let us run. Turkey is afraid of the possibility of creating a Kurdish government, and they support by United States, which is an ethnic cleansing, just to take out all of the Kurds from the zone, and using the terrorist groups of the Front Arusna, and on the other hand, they directly being involved, trying to take to this area only Arab Syria. And this way they can take the Kurds out little by little. Unfortunately, the Kurds do not want the Turkish are supporting these actions, and the Syrian government cannot allow nor that Turkey control the border, nor that the United States install a Kurdish state with a popular power that is just like the one of Israel. It would be so this would maintain Syria, Iraq, Iran in a permanent group. And on one hand, let's see if the president can take away with 30% of the oil reserves. And Syria, on the other hand, the Turkish cannot allow the creation of a Kurdish government, because in Turkey there are 15 million of Kurds, and Turkey would lose 1/3 of its territory. So there is a contradiction here between the interest of the U.S. and the interest of NATO. But at the same time, they want to. This is not the first time that we're doing this. Because all of the zone used to be a Syrian zone. So Turkey wants to keep expanding. Russia cannot allow, nor NATO or the United States, create this Kurdish state that would be very near their border, and because Russia has two other problems. On one hand, in Crimea, the Sebastopol port, that is the only way out of Russia, and their boats are the ones that leave from there and go to Tartus. So if Kurds take over this, then Russia could be left blind in the Mediterranean. So all of this comes up with a very complicated situation, but what they're looking is the comprehension of the Israel state to keep Syria and Iraq in permanent war, and Turkey wants to take over the 30% of what they're exploiting. Very interesting, this parallel that you just established, Nicola. Well, we're coming to the end of our interview. I want to ask Jorge about what Nicola said. Practically, all of the roads take us to the Russian diplomacy for the resolution of this conflict. Do you agree? I very much share the analysis of my friend on the panel. I think that there have been many conversations, and many other situations of the Middle East. But now it could be important to start all over now that there's problems with the Syrian border. But this has a level of violence that is unacceptable and leaves a very hard situation for the diplomats who have to work here. I think that in a brief future, the forces of Syria, with the support of the airplanes of Russia, however, the situation between Turkey and Russia are going to be affected, although now they were strong because of a first meeting between the son's president and so I see that the privilege in the news and what we're going to do is we're going to be accepted by the territories that are working, so you can even know how it works. And let's see what people say about this group. Nicolas, as a conclusion, and in 1 minute, how do you see the resolutions of this aspect? We have you on the phone. We have Nicola on the phone. So, in 1 minute, can you please give us your criteria about this summit that Erdogan is not convoking everybody? So, Turkey, Russia, Germany, and France. Well, I think that what gives them time, on the other hand, the diplomacy of Russia, with a lot of intelligence, will go through with these dialogues. And this will happen. It's not so much because Russia wants to have this type of show with NATO. So what they're doing here is to involve things every time more. But the objective of the Russian diplomacy is not to get involved in a big conflict, to allow the Syrian government to recover their territory and leave NATO. Well, let's not forget that they also go through Ukraine. And the solution is a big military complex. Russia is not interested in opening a new front when their elections are up soon. Thank you, Nicola. And let's start with Jorge Kleiner. Before we go to a pause, I want to see how the relationships have been. The relations between Turkey and Russia have been intermittent throughout the history. It wasn't until 2015 and 16 Ankara and Zizou were going to depend on each other. This will allow them to improve. Especially in the war against terrorism. And what they want to do is to sell the S-400 and S-300 to Syria. I think I will allow Moscow to show their capacity over the real electricity. And these oils will also be distributed throughout Europe. As a proof of this, Turk Stream, that's a oil pipeline, and it's an opening event, had many people attending. In case that Moscow and Ankara don't have a consensus about Idlib, there will be a new tension between these two countries, which will provoke. This show has been seen as the U.S. as an opportunity to create the Russian. There you have some of the more of the.
Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are Telesur, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean.
And the problems in Syria have begun some years before, where the opposition and the terrorist organizations have been the stone on their shoe. Let's see a timeline. Syria has struggled for 9 years, a war imposed by the United States through the financing of terrorist groups. The objectives of this war is to oust the ruling president in 2012. What had happened as a group of protests was a perfect pretext and they went through with the participation of terrorist groups. Syria has a geographical position and which allows to connect the oil reserves. 9 years almost. This has not been possible to attain. The Syrian government, with support of Russia, has restored zones of the country. This has allowed that 1.4 Syrians have gone back to their house. According to UNICEF, 6 million of displaced internally. Let's begin with there is a necessity for health assistance. Here we're going to speak with my friend and expert in the Middle East. We're going to analyze. So let's analyze the conflict in Idlib. Apparently, it's the cherry on the ice cream. This part of the northwestern part of Syria. Who is interested in this? Without a doubt, Turkey. They historically want to take over. They want to take back a region that was hard, but ever since the Ottoman Empire, up until the beginning of last time, he dominated those places, all of the Syrian lands, part of the Iraqi state, all of the north of Africa. This was the Arab world. This is the so-called Arab world. And later, the liberalization of the colonies, that once the Ottoman government had fell, they were now colonies of France and the UK, and now Erdogan believes with his Ottoman forces he can. Why? Because behind Erdogan, they're also trying to attack them. And the United States, of course, and Israel are trying to see what they get out of this. And certainly the NATO allies, they are there. Because there's an opportunity to retake the relationship with Turkey, who's an ally, not so ally, but he is still the leader there. Even for the West, this is not an ally you can trust on. They were always loyal to NATO. After there was this coup d'etat against Erdogan, organized by the NATO, that want to assassinate Erdogan. But he became an ally of Russia. Well, to provoke a situation that could become a nuclear disaster. Well, these conflicts do affect countries, but on the other hand, they also have some advantages. When he wanted to dispute this territory from the Balkans with Russia, in this confrontation, Russia obtained a victory, and ever since, the only opportunities of Turkey at the beginning of the last century, it was because of the Russian support. So every time Russia has gone against Russia, this has not been successful. However, now we're going back to the same thing. This is not a trustable person. Turkey is with themselves. And now I think we're going to have to do that. We take the Ottoman Empire that has stretched all through the Arab countries, that old-fashioned idea, now with the context of these terrorist groups that didn't only form Saudi Arabia. So, and what happens with the Arab brothership that is led by Turkey. They also use these horses of Troy to advance on what used to be part. So you think that there's going to be a problem with the Turkish and this glass is a negotiation. However, I think that Vladimir Putin has always seen how to develop economic relationships, energetic. And in terms of defense also, too. True that, because they were almost the last step that Vladimir Putin developed with Turkey, which was to hand in United States that were participate, and this is to confront Russia. So this is, and this situation has put them to run because Turkey cannot let go of these dreams. They have created these ideas in the people, and now it's time for him to retake the Ottoman Empire. But they cannot control everything. What has been the main obstacle that Turkey has had? Well, it's the Arab resistance, the great alliance formed by Syria, Iran, and Russia. But also that has allowed us to throw out these terrorist groups. And this has happened not only through the petition of Saudi Arabia, but also these groups that have worked in terms of it's incredible how the Middle Eastern, all of their design always goes well. Well, it's not so well known. This Muslim brothership is born as this very ambitious dream to bring back the Sultanate, and as the center of it all would be Turkey, but very easily. I guess if you lose your marriage license, it would be no problem, but they need one from zero. What does we need to press the governments and try to attain what Libya had? The solution would be if Tripoli gave up their maritime territory and would have let Turkey to place and what has had that there's a fight with Cyprus. Well, at the beginning of the last then he expelled the Arab population from this citizen, and Idlib should be an immediate response. So what means that if Idlib is occupied, this will not be the end of it. No, not at all, because it would be we will have to wait to week and then go forward with everything that's.
completamente Alepo por la fuerza siria. Pero si el gobierno sirio no logra controlar,
if they can't control it and overturn these terrorist groups.
sí, en peligro, porque está un poco al norte. Está al norte de Idlib.
Let's not forget that this is at the north of Idlib and there's a space of desert. And the only way to control
Y por tiempo y darle seguridad a Alepo es controlar el territorio de Idlib, territorio sirio, territorio árabe.
this is a very serious topic.
Como parte de la expansión que ha venido desarrollando desde
So one party thinks it's part of its expanding part,
y va hacia Alepo, más al norte, y así permite o le permitiría a Turquía llegar a los campos
and this would allow Turkey to get to
un poco más
these reserves that are a bit more to the east. And let's not forget they have like 30% of the world reserves. This is the end result that Turkey wants, because they don't have oil nor gas, so they have to take over what they can find.
y es Siria. Necesita también en este juego de fuerza
In this force of games, we need to help. We need to keep this.
ruso, pero si puede arrebatárselo a los vecinos para que entonces depender de una potencia. Quizás ese es el
Maybe this is what the strategic thinking is. What is taking us?
algunos allá en la región.
It's called Erdogan or Erdogan, which is how the world calls them.
Un encuentro a cuatro bandas en donde participaría Turquía, Rusia, Francia y Alemania. ¿Qué esperanzas hay?
What are the hopes that after this next summit there might be an agreement? After the agreement of Sochi that really didn't work much, the solution that would put at ease this group. Well, the only hope is that how to defeat these terrorist
O la
groups.
recuperación por medio de la fuerza de este vasto territorio e importante territorio para Siria, como también para el sueño otomanista.
And this would be great for the Ottomanist dream too.
No puede llegar a Alepo.
¿Por qué no invitan al gobierno sirio? O en este caso estaría Rusia en representación del
Porque es una
gobierno
forma
sirio.
también de desconocer al gobierno y la legitimidad del gobierno sirio. Pero estoy seguro que Siria está muy bien representada con un aliado.
But I'm sure that Syria is now very well represented with an ally that has principles, with respect, and under respect of the international law, such as Russia, that has fulfilled everything
o lo que estipula
that is stipulated in the international law. This is the non-intervention in internal affairs and the
si Rusia interviene a
and non-intervening. This is apart from
la mayoría del pueblo
by the
sirio.
Syrian government.
Interviene, sí, porque también en Siria hay grandes intereses rusos que no va a permitirse Rusia.
And they know that Russia has a lot of interest in this zone. There is a reality in this zone. Turkey is playing on both hands. They don't like. Obviously, Russia, Syria, Iran knows who they're playing in the territory. They're not loyal. They know that they want to survive. And Turkey, there are great demons that are waking up. But there's also the force that was able to impose themselves. And therefore, he wants to play these two. Now they want to assassinate him. We want to go back to the West. But nobody trusts this person again. Now there are great contradictions there are within Turkey. And maybe this episode may end with condemning Erdogan. Thank you, Bassem, for the people of Telesur. Let's go to conclusions. Ankara, or the geopolitical interests